Now, after all the hype and build-up, Kamala Harris has given the most dry and boring sit-down interview possible on CNN. Now, I spoke about it at the top of the show, but there was lots of the usual word salads, very little policy substance. But maybe I'm being unfair, so I thought I'd better get some friends in to discuss my panel tonight. Sky News contributor Kel Richards and media commentator Melissa Hoyer. Kel, what did you make of it?
No, you weren't being unfair.
Oh, good. That's why I have you on, Kel, because you just repeat what I say back to me in a slightly nicer voice.
It'd make it sound good. Now, the word, interesting, you used the expression word salad a number of times. Word salad came out of German in the early part of the 20th century, and it was the German words almost identical, Wordsalat.
I mean, it sounds very German.
It does, doesn't it? But it was coined by psychiatrists to describe the mumblings of psychiatrically ill people.
Right.
So when they burbled stuff and it meant nothing, that was a word salad. That was the original meaning of the word. Mm-hmm. And every time Kamala does it, I'm sorry, but that information comes flooding back to me for some unknown reason. I can't believe, I really can't believe that Americans will look at someone as ditzy as this, as shallow as this, and want to vote for her. I know there's a trend saying that she's trending up slightly and Trump is trending down slightly. I can't believe that will play out in November. I've actually got a feeling she may have worked a bit of magic. She may have magically made Trump look like a sensible statesman. And I think if there's a switch to a safe pair of hands, they might look at her and look at him and say, he's the safe pair of hands.
I think it's a question of how long the honeymoon period goes on for. But I mean, you look at, what was 27 minutes, that interview today, and that was an edited interview. She had to have Tim Walz there with her. I mean, if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen.
But I think that's sort of her modus operandi. She has to have him there because when she does talk sort of individually, it's not that great.
He's her comfort animal.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Yes.
She's like that.
It's like having a pet dog.
That's what I said. He was the emotional support.
That's right. He's like the fluffy dog that someone, or her blankie. But the thing is,
I wouldn't want him on top of me.
But the thing is, I mean, what I'm finding amusing with the whole thing, her government is in power, right?
Yes.
And I love the way, and I think we're all noticing this, it's, well, when we get into government, hang on.
You already are.
Shouldn't you have been doing that and doing that and doing that? And I think, at the moment, there are a lot of Americans who are getting sort of, suckered in and they're thinking, no, this is great.
Yes.
She's fresh, she's younger, and we all know that. But there still has to be the logistics of what is this new sort of incarnation of the Democrats going to do that isn't different to what the Democrats have already done.
I'm convinced all the energy is just relief energy. We had to back a candidate that no one could back, and we've got this relief we could back someone else.
It's the anyone but Biden phenomenon is how I've been describing it, but let's see how long it can go on for. Now, the Prime Minister, maybe he should be over at the, well, it's not the Olympics anymore, of course, it's the Paralympics now, but he could give it a go because he's been giving gymnastics a go this week. He's been backflipping on the backflip to exclude a sexuality question in the census. So Labor, you'll remember earlier in the week, axed its plan to include an LGBTQI plus question in the census. That triggered 6 MPs to break ranks and then speak out against the decision. Apparently this was to stop nastiness, quote unquote. But then today, Anthony Albanese reversed that decision. Have a listen.
There will be a sexuality or sexual preference question in the census?
Yes, there will, as long as the testing goes okay and a question can be developed in a way that is sensitive and that gets the information that is required. And the ABS will be testing that. There's a draft question that has been developed.
Melissa, it wasn't going to happen. So it was going to happen, then it wasn't going to happen. Now it is happening again.
But interesting for someone, and a party that has been always very sort of pro-LBGQ, like pro, it's for every word ever, to suddenly, he still doesn't sound quite convinced about the backflip. Even though he has backflipped on the fact that, oh, yes, we will now be including in the census, a whole other group of people. It's still a little bit, I think we're going to do it. So, but I want some strength. I want, we are definitely doing it. Bang, we're doing it.
I don't understand what the issue is, Kel, because the census is there to collect data, statistics on the population, right? And given how much money is spent on LGBTQI plus things and issues, I think it's quite fair for that question to be included in the census so we have an idea of how many people are gay or straight or whatever else. We ask them what their race is, we ask them what their income is. Why wouldn't you include that question? And what's the nastiness that Walz was worried about?
I can't begin to imagine what that might be. Maybe he thought you were going to make some smart cracks on the late debate. I've got no idea. But
what a surprise.
Jim Chalmers, not Walz, but anyway.
Yeah. Look, the point is the census is about accurate data. And there's absolutely no argument against collecting accurate data. It's a really good idea. I did actually wonder at one stage whether this might not play out the way they wanted to play out. Some years ago, it might have been 10 years ago, La Trobe University published figures claiming that 4% of the Australian population are gay or lesbian, whatever, 2.5% of men, 1.5% of women. And suddenly you might find a whole lot of people saying, oh, it's only 4%. Let's focus on the other 96%. It might not play out the way they intend. And if they decide to include trans people and people say, oh, 1/10 of 1%, why are we doing all this pronoun stuff?
Yes.
So, accurate data is important. We should collect it. We should know what it is. We should understand it. And I just wonder if it'll play it in a slightly different way than they expect.
Indeed. They don't actually want us to know the numbers. Now, very quickly before we go to a break, a ridiculous report from the ABC yesterday that the Deputy Prime Minister, Richard Walz, that's why I had his name on the brain, he set up a second office in Geelong. It's a 240-metre walk from his original one. Taxpayers, of course, will foot the bill, or they have footed the bill for this, $600,000. So he's got his electoral office on one side of the road, and 240 metres down the road is his ministerial office for $600K.
$600K.
Melissa, we've only got 30 seconds, but why couldn't he have just amalgamated them?
Amalgamate them all. I mean, we are on and on and on. Cost of living. Then suddenly we hear $600,000 on an office that is totally unnecessary.
Look, the Defence Department in Melbourne would have given him an office if he'd asked for it. No $600,000 involved.